and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how I restored this number 4.5 Stanley plane. Now I'm really happy with how this project turned out. As you can see, I've still got to repair that at some point. All I did was put some expanding glue in it so it held together a bit better. But I'm really happy with the overall outcome. It performs brilliantly, and this video is going to show you how I got the plane to perform and look like this. Let's get going. This plane was very kindly gifted to me, and as you can see, it's not in that bad condition, apart from the broken handle and some stubborn bits of old sawdust and some bits of rubbish, to be honest. So I spent a lot of time cleaning up this plane, and I'm really happy with how it's turned out. So we're now going to scribble some lines across the plane. So, I don't know, something like that will do. Same on the other side. Same on the underside. And that will tell me whether I've actually flattened the plane or not. And if they don't come off, then we've got a problem. This is 320 grit, ideally use 120, I can't. So now we're going to get back to flattening to see if we can remove these marks. The majority of this project is just sanding, and to be honest, it's not that bad if you put a podcast on or some YouTube or something like that. So I sanded with 320 grit on the bottom. So I'm now going to take the handle at the back off, and probably the front one, just to make it a bit easier. So literally just unscrew the handles, should come out fairly easily. Just take the screw bit out, and then this should untwist. Like so, try not to lose it on the floor if you can. And then that can go back on. You didn't really need to take that top screw off, some you do. This one apparently you didn't. No big deal. Right, so then what I'll do is I'll sand this up with some 400, remove the old lacquer later. Then we're going to move on to the front. Sorry, the back of the plane even. And we're going to take this one out. Now this one might be a bit more problematic because I'm going to have to buy a new handle. Yes, I could make one. I've considered it, but I think for the effort it would take, it's probably not worth the time. However, I may change my mind. Right. It's a lovely plane though. And yes, I'm sure some people might say, oh, don't do this, don't do that to the plane. It's my plane. I can restore it how I wish. And I'm not intending on ever selling this plane because it was given to me by someone and I wouldn't ever want to get rid of it. So if I decide to do it like this, then that's how I'm going to do it. So you can see we're getting there. The bottom of the sole of the plane's looking better. These bits need a bit more on this side. But I need a new bit of 320 grit. Found this in the bottom of the plane when I removed the frog. Look at that. All of this old, horrible, manky sawdust. So it was well worth removing that because that will not be helping to adjust the plane properly. And you can see there's rather a lot of it in there, which I've just poured onto the floor. Yeah, just as well I'm taking these bits apart because there's a lot of rubbish in this. I mean, it is an old plane, so now we've got it back to basically just the body of the plane. There's no screws, no parts in here. That's as bare as it can get. So we're now going to sand it flat again. If you're going to have a go at restoring a plane yourself, one thing I'd really recommend is making sure you take all of the handles, the frogs, the blades, all of those bits off before you start sanding. It makes your life 100 times easier. The one thing I also recommend is scribbling some lines on the bottom, as that really ensures you've got it flat, as if you can still see those lines, you know it's not flat. The next stage of the restoration was to try and make the sides as parallel to each other as possible. Now to do this, I just sanded it like I did previously against a piece of 320 grit paper to try and smooth it out. So I've got the plane in the sink, hopefully you can see that if I put the light there. And now I'm just going to use a combination of a toothbrush and a little sponge just to clean out the mud and the dirt and the sawdust and stuff that's stuck inside here. And then, as you saw, I was using that whatever that emery backed thing is, this thing. This won't do any damage to the plane, and I'm not pushing any particular pressure on this. I ran it across about 5 times. It's not going to do, it's 1,500 grit. It's just going to give it a good polish. So gently run the hot water, and I'm just going to gently scrub it, and I will make sure this is 100% dry before parts go back in. I will use a hairdryer to make sure it's fully dry. So just nice bit of warm water. And just scrubbing around all of these parts. So there's a bit of paint there that will need to go away. But just literally scrubbing around That water's a bit hot for me. Oh well. Doesn't look it, but this water gets very hot. So now I've got most of the dirt over, now I'm just going to use this and just get into some of the harder to reach bits. Yes, this has got a bit of abrasion to it, but nothing major. Try and see if we can get that name cleaned up. So I've just taken a blade apart, and look at all this sawdust and rubbish. Just scrape it all away. It's really important you remove all this, because otherwise you're going to get inaccuracies in your cut. You won't get as nice a cut, and it will just be horrible. So there's quite a lot of rust there. I don't know whether you can see that. So I've mounted the handle into the drill chuck. However, there's all this wobbly space here because this is meant for the bigger handle. So what I'm going to do is pack it out with some washers. So now you can see I've got it mounted in with all these washers, and it should allow me just to do this. So as you can see, we now have a lovely finish on this. Really happy with that. Quick and easy method of sanding stuff up. Then just unscrew this, take out the washers, and there you go. Nice sanded handle. Now, I'd never ordinarily do that, however, I was interested if it would work well, and it appears to work lovely. The frog, for example, that definitely needs a good clean up, and I'll try and flatten the bottom of this, I suspect, as well. With the plane's body mostly cleaned up, we're now going to apply some paint. Now, I've put all these screw bits back in, so that I don't get any paint in those bits, so that they stay nice and clean. So now we're just going to apply maybe one coat of Hammerite direct to rust metal paint. Now I'm just going to use a very, very thin brush to do this. I've got this one, which is the thickest brush, so it might take me some time, but I think it's going to be really worth it, and I think will transform the look of this plane. And I put the handle in as well, just so I've got something to grip if I want to do the inside bits. But yeah, we're just going to paint around it, and hopefully it will look really nice. I then painted one nice even coat of Hammerite black paint over the plane. I didn't need to mask here, as I wasn't really going over any of the screw holes, as I'd put the screws back in to ensure I didn't get any excess paint over it. I then sanded the frog, I sanded the blades, and I just made sure everything had all the rust taken off and looked much nicer. I did also use my polishing wheel, as you'll see later on, but to be honest, it's just trying to make the plane look as good as possible and get rid of all the stubborn rust. So I've set the lathe up, but not for what you might think. I'm not wood turning. Instead, I'm just going to give this a little buff on the buffing wheel. I then used my polishing wheel with some wood turners blend to clean up the handle, and this worked really well. So here it is off the buffing wheel. I'm really, really happy with how it's turned out. I think it's really nice, and I'm looking forward to putting it back on the plane. I then used some of Axminster's pink polishing compound on my polishing wheel. Now, I've never used this before, and it was an absolute godsend for this project. It made it so much easier and really helped bring out all of the nice colours and shine up the brass on this project. Wow, am I impressed with this pink polishing compound. Look at the finish on that. That's insane. That is literally insane. I mean, you can see me there, look. There I am. You can probably see me wave. Yep, that is really, really cool. Same with the other one. You can see me in it. I have never used something like that before. And we managed to get wood turners blend onto this one as well. And we're going to polish this part. Then I did a little bit more polishing on the polishing wheel again, and this time I polished the blade, I polished everything just to give it a really nice shine. Now, to be honest, you don't need to polish the blade as there's no need, but I just wanted to make everything as shiny as possible. So with all the constituent parts now cleaned up, apart from the handle, but I'm going to assemble it with this handle so we can try it out, and I'll purchase another one. That polishing wheel is absolutely awesome. It polishes stuff so well, and we'll just round over the top edges. just like this. Same on the other side. Now we're going to assemble it. The last stage of this project was just to reassemble everything, and all you needed for this was a flathead screwdriver. Ideally, I would have used one of those specialist plain screwdrivers, as it makes it a hell of a lot easier, but I don't have one, so I just made do with what I had. Well, here's basically the equivalent of what we started out. This is a number 4.5. It's a bit older, sorry, a bit newer, and it's made in the UK. This is an older one made in the USA, and oh my gosh, am I happy with the end result. I need to buy a new handle, which I won't upload the video till I've got a new handle, but oh, I'm so happy with it. This has been about 6 hours of work, maybe, to get this to this condition, and I suspect some people could probably do it in about a quarter of that, but I'm happy with how it looks, and it's an absolute joy to use. Now, with this back handle, there was a variety of things I could have done. Firstly, I could have bought a new handle, which is probably what I'll end up doing, or I could have remade it. I chose to do neither of those two things. Instead, I took the old handle and used some Gorilla expanding glue just to fix it, and this worked an absolute treat. You can probably see the glue line here, as there was a big crack here where some of the wood had actually chipped out, but this is quite rare rosewood, and I didn't really want to buy a new piece as rosewood's extremely expensive, and I'd rather just use what I've got. And as you can see, it's actually held together really well, and I've done a couple of strength tests. I've tried to snap it, and it's incredibly strong. Gorilla expanding glue is brilliant for this purpose, and it's worked really well. So that's how I've got this handle to look like this, but obviously you could just buy a new handle, or if yours isn't cracked, you don't have to worry about that. But for me, I'm happy with that, and it gives me a plenty strong grip. In order to keep the metal in really nice condition, I applied some of Axminster's machine wax over the whole of the plane's body. You don't have to do this, but it is a good idea. Thank you very much for watching this plane restoration. I really hope you enjoyed following along with the restoration. I really enjoyed restoring this thing. It definitely was a bit more of a challenge because I've not tried any of these things before. For an example, this was my first ever time using a polishing wheel, and it was a great learning experience. As you can see, the brass is very, very, very shiny, and all of the parts, in my opinion, look really nice. I'm really glad I also went to the length of repainting it and ensuring that everything was parallel and the bottom of the plane was flat. Because if you don't have a flat plane, then there's not really much point in using it, because the purpose of a plane usually is to dimension timber by flattening it or squaring it or whatever, and in my opinion, this is going to perform a lot better now than it did. And I'm aware some of you more purist people may not like what I've done with this because I've taken it back and taken all the patina off, but it's my plane and this is how I've chosen to restore it. I'm never ever going to sell this because it was gifted to me by someone, so I'm always going to be using this plane, so that's why I've chosen to restore it in this way. Well, thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'm really, really happy with the outcome. I'll put a couple of photos in the next bit. Thank you for watching.